All right, here we go again. Buckle up. So, I don't have all the facts, and Hashem, being the Almighty, suggested I don't look up the facts and address it without the facts so we can address what we need to address in a more total fashion. So, basically, Christy Noem seemed to allow agents to do some things. I don't have all the insight, I don't know what the limits were. Uh, but the reality is, she realized the psyop, the stress of the psyop. When we look at court cases, you're not responsible for what you don't know. And even if you do know, if there's some sort of good faith articulation that you believe something that frees you from that, then that's fine. Because it's a high stress job. Everybody knows that. But what we're confronted with now is individuals creating a professional spycraft environment. And when it's professional protesters is way gone. This is professional spycraft, professional agitator. Their goal is to get the officer to shoot them, whether they realize that's what they're doing or not. You can bring your own death if you obsess with stuff like that. You can will something horrible into your life. And again, your physical actions create the scenario for it. So I'm going to go the other direction right now, real quick. So we have an officer. I didn't look for any information, so I don't know if he had his emergency lights on or how many of the protesters were around him, if any. Basically, one thing though, we have not heard anything out of Minnesota, so we don't know what's going on there. So just because you don't see it in the news doesn't make it true that nothing's going on. Again, that's a psychological method, a psychological operation that could be waged against your mind. When Christy Noem's there, they want to get rid of her, and what do? They in your head on your news channels. Show, look. It's just not time for Mullen's execution. That's why they're not jamming him so hard. Just starting it. It looks like to me, and it could just be media fluctuation, that they're starting to increase again in Minnesota. In other words, while you're not looking, they increase and make you think they're not there. Well, again, there could be an argument made based upon that idea that you're not responsible for what you know, and you're only responsible what you can humanly calculate and tolerate. So they're playing a game with that. De-escalation is only possible to a certain point. Well, yeah, if you're on a pill or something, you take a Valium, yeah, maybe even further, but that's not humanly possible. And that is their goal, for your agents to use drugs, prescription and otherwise. So again, this is the reality of what's coming against the ICE officers, more so than the police department doesn't generally have to deal with it at that level. Well, because nobody's paying to take the police department out the way they're paying to take ICE out. The narcos are paying. There's a whole world here where the money in the beginning is narco money, and then it gets converted into all sorts of things, maybe even PI, private investigator money. Well, I want you to investigate those ICE guys or gals and gals. And what do you think it's for? An assassination. Bavina was assassinated, a character assassinated, and Christy Noem was character assassinated. Now, hers was going on longer. They wrote her off years ago. Again, Obama revenge. And their people know that. So again, you have to find those people from the Obama era because they attacked me also. I'm sure they attacked some of your officers and caused suicides. So at At the worst, it's probably some sort of road rage. The officer pulled up alongside, rolled down his window, pulled out the pea shooter. Now, the question is, did he have his emergency equipment on? If he did, that's one thing on his side. Were there a crew of really terrorists around him trying to incite him? One thing you should understand, and I explained this before, when an officer responds to a protest, the incitement is different than when an officer's out working cases that, possibly some of the people who they were looking for that day were murderers or not necessarily murderers. They used weapons of violence previously, like firearms, against others or brandished them or whatever it was. And possibly looking for murderers, because what'll happen is if it's a nice person that they're looking for and they committed a homicide, the whatever agency is looking for them, sometimes ICE will work with them. So they're looking for, we in the Marshal Service, we would work the homicide. We had city officers, and I'm sure they do still. They have city officers on the task force. And again, it's not every murder homicide case, but if it's a hot, it's a gang related, generally, yes. Even some of the other homicides, but generally gang related, type of thing, drug related. We would work those cases, and everybody would just go out that was assigned continually, possibly for as long as it took. You didn't get much sleep if something like that was going on. Whenever the phone rang, you were just out the door. So what I'm getting at is, so again, as we here, I'm trying to articulate it. So as we know, in that Graham case and some of the other cases, there are reasons that, logical reasons why you would do the wrong thing. And that the officer is not held culpable for doing the wrong thing for, theoretically the right reasons. Because again, human factor does play in. So the courts have shown that they accept some sort of condition of human frailty, human weakness, whatever you want to call it. Based upon, and this is where the administration needs to clean up its arguments, it has to argue what's going on the street. It's not the same as what's required of an officer responding to a protest, because these officers are doing something completely different. Right? They're not looking for a homicide suspect. They're not necessarily being personally targeted. And it's the narcos. That's who's doing. I mean, there's also fraudsters and others. And they do have an outsized representation because they have that money. And they've donated to many places and many people and let them know, hey, we are the narcos at a certain point. And sometimes it is a bribe. Sometimes it is through the legal systems or the pseudo-legal, the dark money, quote unquote. Narcos are part of dark money. Narcos and the fraudsters are definitely part of dark money. Oh no, it's only the big corporations for Republicans. You're screwing things up more. So again, my point is this: it could be simple road rage, and we don't want officers road raging. But then if we look, let's say it's something like that, and I'm not saying it is. I'm just kind of throwing things out there. We still have to look at the conditions that the officer was confronted at. He did allege that he believed this person was somebody that was stalking him. Now, if you have a family and they stalk you, you don't know where that stalking begins and where it ends. And I will tell you, it doesn't end with you. It ends when they can end you and your family. But it doesn't end at that point. They still go after you and your family. All right. So that's interesting. It's happening, but there's a lot that the secretary has to look at around that to know what it really is. Again, I'm not telling you to accept it or not accept it. I'm not telling you anything like that. But you have to understand you might be manipulated to believe it's something that it's not. It's like the idea nobody's following you more. Nobody follows you. Yeah, you're following me and you're crooked. Oh no, we're actually working a sex crime case. Again, whatever can get them that unlawful access. So again, your officer may have been confronted with unlawful access at a minimum, but that unlawful access may have been a psychological operation designed for your officer to pull his gun and shoot somebody at the level of trillion-dollar technology, because that's what we paid to have the intelligence services know how to do that kind of thing. So again, the deep state sold the crown jewels, as I've said before, the crown jewels of the intelligence agencies to make millions and millions and millions of dollars. Oh, there's that thing. I got really sensitive smoke alarm, but I am making taco bread. What do they call it? I think a tortilla. Right. I'm just heating that up. I forgot to have my thing on. We'll try to act like it's not going off. Oh, they're cursing me pretty hard. I almost tripped over the vacuum cord. That's what that was. That's somebody's listening and cursing directly. There, it went away. But that's the kind of thing that may also be happening to your agents. If they're devils, and they probably are, because they are. So they curse your officers, and when they walk around their house, they stub their toe, they fall over the vacuum cleaner. So that raises that stress level. But again, usually you'll find a physical aspect to it. So your officer might be stalked. Your officer may be drugged, a ton of things. Again, the deep state is the one that dumbed down the investigations in those things because they use it. If a deep state person rapes a woman and is paranoid about being arrested for it, that deep state person will send that same operation that I'm speaking about that they would send after ICE after the woman. So you wonder why nobody said anything about Swalwell. She may have had people. People don't talk about it. I mean, it's crazy because they're afraid, I guess, that it'll go further. The idea is if you don't talk about it, your life's going to be better for some reason than if you talk about it. So when they get an opportunity, they said something about Swalwell finally, but again, it takes a lot to say something. I felt like I was being followed because they put it in your head that you'll be locked up for being crazy. Right. In fact, I'll show you people they do that to. Well, they're indoctrinating you to be afraid sheep. And these are young women. They don't, never in the military or anything like that, so they don't know much of nothing about that kind of thing. I'm going to have myself a kind of burrito thing here. Lunch stops for no man. So, all I'm saying is there are circumstances that have been articulated and circumstances that could be articulated that we need to look at. Don't buy into Minnesota AG or Minnesota assistant AGs getting absolute access. There's a psychological scam there. But eventually they'll go after every one of your officers and trump up cases using spycraft operators. And that may be one of it. They may have sent spies after that officer or spy, qualified. They knew how to do that spy work, whether they learned it from a crook or from the CIA, possibly being a crook. They may have sent him after that officer to stress that officer out. Then they send all the protesters to cut him off and all. I've had that done to me without even being in the government. They'll drive next to you. I think this guy was a cop, actually. An undercover guy. May have been a Fed. I've had it done a couple times, but this is one I remember right now. Try to drive me off the road. And then if I come after him, what happens? He shoots me and says I jumped him or something. What I'm saying is that even if you find it as road rage, you still have to look at the conditions. And I believe there's an argument under Graham in some of the other cases, along with that one, that you could make about, again, I don't know if that person cut the officer off or did anything. And again, even if that person is an innocent person as far as that, what was going on around that officer that day? People don't just get to make, again, if you don't prosecute them, if you can't, that's Minnesota's problem. You don't just give them access to your officer after they're being harassed and followed and stalked. That's the game. I've lived it for over 30 years. Send teams in to destroy the psychology of the victim and then do something. But why would they do it? Because that person is persona non grata in the deep state and they want them out of the government or in prison, even better. Or here's another one. That son of a gun arrested my uncle. So these are people with millions of dollars. So they pay millions of dollars and walk away. Says, we'll take care of it. The next 5 years, that person's history. Wait a little while. So the evidence disappears that they had any type of meeting, if there is any evidence. And that's pretty much the way it works. It doesn't work. So what you have to actually do now is actually go back and investigate the circumstances around that officer, I would say for the last 6 months. You don't have to charge people. That's just about local cops too. No, you don't. Not even in a shooting. They just might need to be gone from the department or maybe even retired on disability. If you're not investigating and charging people that are stalking that officer, then you can't charge that officer when something untoward happens. And I believe that's an argument the officers could take in court even if it wasn't that person, based upon something like Graham. But you're allowing that person to be stressed out and harassed 24/7 if they could. And then you're going to come along and go after their victim of harassment. And that harassment is a professional psychological operation that includes noise. And having yourself cut off and people chasing you. The scam is we all have moments when people cut us off, but we don't pull our gun and point it at their head. Again, how do you know they're pointing it at their head? Liberals lie. Liberals embellish. Jussie Smollett was an honest man compared to Minnesota anti-ICE people. It's that bad. Oh, Jussie Smollett never targeted any individual specifically to say that person did it to me. These people do that. They'll lie all day long. Jussie Smollett never stalked anybody. He's an honest person compared to what lives up in Minnesota. We'll probably name it. We'll claim it and name it. Or name it and claim it. What is that thing? So again, done my lunch there. I ate a little burrito there. Vegetarian burrito. Imitation chorizo. Having a gas oven is great because you can take the tortilla out of the pack or the wrap, whatever you call it, and then you turn the burner on. You go, just, it's like a grill. Just heat that thing up, brown it here, brown it there. So the idea is he could just be a simple road rager. And we can't allow that. But let them make you believe he's a road rager. If they're like what was done to me in the Marshal Service, oh my God, who knows who all was involved? But they did kill Luna. And the thing about it is, I mean, it was a major operation, psychological operation to cause somebody to be able to shoot me and kill me. They did it to, what was that guy's name? Arthur Lloyd in the Marshal Service. That's why he pulled his gun and shot the guy. But the guy was almost worthy of shooting. I think the evidence was skewed. The Montgomery County Police Department, the officers believe it was a bad case. They didn't want to testify. They were forced to testify. And Marshall says, here's the bullshit case file of this employee. So if you don't know what happened, Arthur was a black guy. I'm on the Ken Starr detail. I go over to the office. I don't remember who it was. Maybe it was a warrant we were working or something. Who is Matt Burke? I mean, that's the point. It was Matt Burke that told me. So it's, I'm not totally against it. I just don't take what somebody says and run with it. It may have even been Shemp. I can't remember. So we're in there and he's like, that guy right there. He's this, he's that, he's this. I'm like, yeah, okay. I don't even know this guy. Why you bothering me? I'm never going to see him again in my life. But again, Hashem showed me what the attitude was. Hey, and he ended up, again, there's plenty of good employees, plenty of bad employees in the Marshal Service. I believe it's because he was black. And he was probably, some black guys, they've been damaged in life and they're gonna make it rough for you a little bit. I wouldn't say he has power to do anything to them, but he's probably gonna have some choice words back a little bit. Arthur Lloyd didn't respect the white power. So again, where that exists, it exists, but don't play it up this way and play it up that way. And then all of a sudden we find out you're all supremacists, just BSing about white power in certain situations. It was bad in the Marshal Service. I didn't know anything. I thought I went into Marshal Service. I said, this is going to be the most racially sensitive organization as far as, where we were in like the 90s. I mean, racial sensitivity was, just was below where even the average person is today. Because it was a civil rights organization. I respected that. I felt like, that was a kind of a badge of courage kind of deal. Medal of Honor. Turned out to be the most racist organization left on the planet, I think. USMS should have been USKKKMS. That's part of where I failed the Marshal Service. I wasn't racist enough. By the time I left that place, I was so disgusted with racism. Even nice people that made a joke about a black guy, I couldn't even deal with it. And he happened to be another detective. So I was like, yeah, if you can't be nice to the detective, that's going to affect you on the street. I had people I knew. I didn't say anything. I just looked at him like, give it a rest. But I don't say stuff like that. But in the Marshal Service, didn't say anything like that. I'd say "foo you" to somebody, a couple other of them, because I didn't realize they were getting paid to do this to me. They get in the middle of my work. Just leave me alone. Let me work. Rest, I don't give a shit. Go f off all day and sit at your desk and go run for 4 hours and go home and say, come back. Your little girl would go home at like 9. Yeah, you should she get like an 8:30 court, be done by 9, be in her car back home, come back to work if she felt like it. She was CIA backed, no doubt. There's no reason for CIA to back her other than for corruption. Okay. So again, he was a drunk Navy dude. Again, this is probably after at least, let's see, it was 2005. I had it done to me. I didn't get out of the car. I called somebody who used to be a Capitol policeman. He's one of the deputies in our office. And I said, I need you to run this plate. I told him what was happening. I was in a Volkswagen, but it was a setup. So the boss says, we're going to give you have your own vehicle. And, that way, because we were doing, it was during 9/11. It was actually during 9/11. No, it was all around me. They were using stewardesses, all sorts of people. But again, I know it wasn't everybody around me, but there were certain people that were surely part of it. Or I guess the flight attendants, they call them now. So the guy's chasing me, and I didn't get out of the vehicle. I just ran the plate, and then because the hostile work environment, I didn't take it any step further because they denied that they would deny that it was happening. That's their job as far as deep state assassination, which is deep state murder, actually. That's why the CIA backs them. And then they don't back me because I'm not going to lie. I mean, yeah, there's some things you can embellish for operational purpose, not for make Brennan a millionaire purpose or make Tenet a millionaire purpose or a bigger millionaire. So he gets out of the car, shoots the guy, and gets 15 years. But the Marshal Service had this file that they turned over to Montgomery County, which I think is illegal. They should have had a subpoena it. So the file was generated during a time period where Arthur Lloyd sued the Marshal Service for discrimination and won $36,000 while he's an employee. He stayed an employee. I wouldn't say do it if you're going to stay an employee, unless you get a big payout and have your office changed. He should have had his office changed. Once he won the $36,000, he should have asked for the judgment to include an office change. They still would have tried to get him, but it wouldn't have been easy. He was in D.C. So actually, yeah, Hashem, I didn't get out of that car. He got out of the car. That's when you make a mistake. Call 911 and keep moving. I've done it before. Unfortunately, that the world is not fair. And as soon as you step out of that car, you're wrong. Even if the person's wrong, other person's wrong, which they were. He's being harassed by a drunk Navy dude. Now, the point that nobody brings up or may even gets to their mind is the fact that the Navy dude may have been deep state. And he may have been sitting with a buddy in his car, and he said, you ever get a chance to do that guy? He's the worst guy in the world. Just like, remember how somebody said that to me? It was either Matt or Shemp or something like that. They didn't tell me to do them. Okay, I'm not going to say they did that. But they said, that's the worst guy in the world. But take it one step further. When you get a chance to do that guy Dewey, again, you know what they told you in Pennsylvania State Police when about a week before I got here. Oh, actually, they said it last time, right? The other time they told you, they thought I was going to move here. So again, he was set up. He ended up getting 15 years. So again, that's something that the secretary may want to begin to speak to them about. Because we're right if we're wrong. I've lived a life for 40 years. I was right. If I could do charity and be the worst guy in the world because I'm trying to have sex with everyone, and the people accusing me are actually having sex with everyone. Me, I'm not having sex with anybody, including the police department. Right, Godly? Church is godly. How many prostitutes do they frequent? That's expensive. 1,000. So what else are those cops into with $1,000 a pop? I don't believe they can afford that. I mean, how often did they go? There's probably more to that case. More MOORE to that case. Just go through my archived X. That's archive.com. Maybe you'll figure it out. Oh yeah, okay, yes. All right. FBI actually has it in a file, so they don't have to go to archive.com. They can actually hand me just find a case to prosecute and then link up with me and hand me my archive that you have it stored at FBI headquarters. Or actually it's digitized. Used to be stored. You used to have to store things. Now everything's digitized. Warehouse space was. I actually still need warehouse space for a lot of that. But so again, he may be no. Arthur Lloyd was innocent. I'll tell you that. People in the Marshal Service should have went to prison, regardless of what happened around him. All right, all right. So he was made to shoot that. That's what they do to me. Believe me, that's what they thought would happen in Kansas. He's getting close. We'll get like $1 million bonus. In fact, you made an evidence trail that still exists. Pennsylvania State Police said, no, we don't want to create an evidence trail. Let's stop where we are and move forward. We can articulate what happened at this point, but we're going to move forward now because we can't articulate anything now because we know the truth. So the same thing, you want to instruct your agents that they could be hit by spies, a spy cell. And they'll get into your head again. Spies are trained. We spent trillions of dollars over the years figuring out how to get into people's heads by acting the fool while being covered for acting the fool. Having a complete operation that will cover us. There's people I guarantee you that went to prison where someone else said, where someone said that guy, hit that guy first, and it was the other way around because they have a spy cell as witnesses. Now, you have to be careful because there's cameras and other things that could refute. And if you're an officer and you thought it was just by accident that the person misrepresented, like the witness, I had a instance saw it wrong because this is what we see, and you see you see them all drive in from different locations. There's no connection. Doesn't seem like they know each other. It's a spy cell. And they were at least character assassination. It's an assassination because you put that guy or gal out on bond after something like that happens, after they've been harassing them, they may eat their gun or eat a gun or go out and suicide by cop. And they know these things. And they are actually church members. That's what I'm speaking about. But again, it's in the scriptures that they would be that way. Like church people are like the last person to read the Bible. I think the atheists actually read it more than the church people, just so they can talk about the church people. What's it say there? Oh, they're not doing that. Of course not. But read the other one. See, that's them right there. Read the next chapter. It tells you who they really are. It's not the church. So again, Yeshua ben David did call them this, the synagogue of Satan. But again, the concept is patterns of behavior. And again, he was Jewish. There was no church. He didn't have a Hindu temple there. Lived in Jerusalem when he was speaking that most of the time. But he went out to the other areas. So the concept is the temple of Satan, the church of Satan, the Gurdwara of Satan. That type of thing. That means a certain percentage of those organizations would belong to Satan. I don't know what the Pope's up with. Pope's confused about the scripture. I understand the idea that he is tasked by the nature of his religion and his walk with God to bring peace. But again, he's not a military person. He's not. Well, in the Bible, there's military people, there's spies, there's political leaders that have a little more knowledge on the overall. The problem is you made him like he's the king of Catholicism, but that's just a religion thing. He doesn't have enough knowledge about, well, because you can't leave Iran. We never should have left it this long. That fell over there. Somebody's cursing me. It's one of those lobby brooms. Oh, they call me an N-word person. You can clean the lobby, N-word. See? That's from people probably in Catholicism. That the Pope wouldn't probably say that, but he has people that are like that. So get back to the idea, you have to educate your people, you have to educate yourselves, you have to look at this from a spy point, an espionage, spy, a psychological warfare perspective. And I think that's what they were afraid about, Kristi Noem at that point. Believe me, there's tons of people in ICE that were boobies. We don't want any more, but it's funny. I don't know if there is, but the point being is that's their goal, that kind of thing. And they do it by stressing you out and pressuring you. But it's also Jonathan Luna type of thing, Jonathan Nichols type of thing. I don't know if Jonathan Nichols went to church, but his church may have killed him. For what? To be multimillionaires and have their sex crimes covered over. That's a powerful thing. Well, when you're in the deep state, they show you things. Like I wasn't in the deep state. They show the victim of the deep state stuff. I don't know why they would show it to me. It makes no sense. I guess they thought they were high from Jonathan Luna's death and thought, we'll get Larry next. Show him everything. He'll kill himself. So the reality is you have to educate your people. Well, they show you that they can make the most fraudulent statement in the world, supported by cameras, that you didn't do what they said you did, and it doesn't matter. So they used something to push me into the employee assistance program. And I already had personally kind of investigated cases. I don't think I went on computers or anything on this particular case, or I might have. Well, maybe I did. Maybe it's because they're stalking you online so they can find out what you're investigating. No, they're in the government. They can look at your government computer. Again, remember Christy Nome saw the spyware? That's to find out what she's looking at. What, like, if she goes home and goes, how many times have DSHS employees been arrested for da? And they go, oh, she's investigating this. See? That's what that spyware was. The people that put the spyware on a computer got her for getting for the whole spyware thing. Now it's weird because Elon's involved, but you can't. Elon can help you, but you can't trust him. He's worse than Russia was during the Cold War, Soviet Union during the Cold War. He'll help you just to take you out. I believe his people were part of that. Sexualization routines. Right. And then a sociopath will connect with Christy so she won't think he's part of it. And the spy will also, and try to help her. And again, another scam would have been, oh, we got the spyware off of that, but the spyware was somewhere else, Right. Anyway, they use listening devices and everything else. You listen to your phones. And I'm not paranoid. They're that criminal, that heinous. So you have to instruct your officers on the situation. You also have to look at each case with the knowledge that if this person was harassed beyond a certain point, then de-escalation is not going to work. No matter what they tell you. So the counter investigation hopefully was conducted to find out who that person was in that vehicle, who was around that officer that day, and then you got to go back 6 months and see if how much that officer was harassed. It's a scam. So, yeah, Karen Shelton was one of the greatest employees because she was so calm, cool, and collected. I'm glad we got rid of Moore. He's just a dreg of the Marshal Service. Couldn't do anything right. See, it's a scam. Because she receives, the other person will receive the other side of the psyop. I'm not worried about her. She committed felonies against me and my family. She has no protection in the Marshal Service. She committed them outside the Marshal Service and while employed during the Marshal Service. They owe me millions for just what she did. So they create a cover story by discrediting their victim, who wasn't even interested in any type of big position or suing the Marshal Service, but that's what they tell everybody as the bait. Oh, tell on all of us for what we've all been doing. So we have to increase this and get rid of them. Again, CIA. Well, because they live in Maryland. And the last thing they want is a non-deep state employee in Maryland. In fact, they never cleaned up Maryland until like beginning 10 years later, or actually probably about 8 years later. And then they started cleaning it, and everybody got the message: no corruption. There was like 3 corruption cases. That corruption was 10 times as big when I was there. I'm sure of it. But nobody ever got popped. And I wasn't interested in popping anybody. Just stay away from me. Idiots. Just trying to live my life. I have a mission from God. So again, the idea is you don't know what your officer's going through, and you have to investigate. They're going to tell you no, and the problem is you could find your 6 best DHS employees, and guess what? Every last one could be part of the deep state, and you believe they're the anti-deep state because they voted Republican in the last 39 elections. So you have to make sure that you know what was going on around your officer. You need to have honest investigation. You know what they were doing. Somebody revealed what they were doing, but it's just a cover story. Like, I didn't realize it. This guy from Ohio, I guess he outlived it. He even told me, he said, I got in trouble for I bought a badge off of eBay. Wasn't thinking. FBI contacted him. So he was being targeted for the FBI to have contacted him instead of saying, hey, that thing is, throw away. You just give it to us. And maybe that's what they did in the end. I don't know. He didn't know what he was doing. He wasn't trying to impersonate anybody. He already had a USMS badge. He was collecting badges. It was a covered badge where he couldn't collect it. I don't remember what it was. But he told me, he said, I was on, it was right around 9. It's actually right after that thing of me being chased. And I went to Virginia to secure Virginia in the Pentagon area and Mars Service headquarters area. After I worked in the airports or the airport BWI, they tried to take me out at BWI. All right, that was an attack. I'll take that blank spot area out. So you may have been receiving some information that I didn't know you were receiving. Right? So that would be a criminal intention on their part to eavesdrop by deception. So eavesdrop by deception. If you were still hearing me after they took out my screen and internet for a little while. I'll just pile on the charges inside. Y'all want a game? You'll see a game, guaranteed. But it's not a game like you've ever seen. Because you're obviously a new generation of criminals and psychopaths stalking the world for your own personal and criminal gain. So what they didn't want me to tell you was this. So I'm talking to this guy, and he tells me in Arizona, they just popped 3 or 4 deputies. They didn't do anything about it because they're deep state protected. Obviously, we know the answers today. They were stalking a coworker, and when they got caught, they said they were investigating their coworker. Again, that's what they probably told everybody around me. You can't investigate your coworker. You have to bring in outside sources, but then outside sources would see what they were doing to the coworker. So that's why that scam existed. So you have to be careful of who's in your agency and departments, because it's obvious that the deep state wasn't completely fired. And in fact, like I told you, you fired people that weren't deep state. And it wouldn't be deep state. You may have actually empowered deep state by firing the people you fired. It takes a lot of due diligence to find the deep state and fire the right people, because they prepare lists of people to exterminate and assassinate years prior to your arrival. So that would be one of the scenarios they would think up. There's no doubt the deep state took out Christy Nolan. I'm just telling you. But yet it took them probably 15 years. And let's say maybe a year or two later, so at least 12 years. And that should not be allowed. That is the largest crime in our nation, and it's what's causing all this crime. That's the largest criminal enterprise. It involves Comey, Mueller, Brennan, Clapper, Tenet. I'd resign from the CIA once they made a medal with Tenet's name on. I said, that's it. That's all I can take. I'm out of here. I'm serious. He's a sludge, man. He's garbage. We didn't win that war, and we didn't win it because of garbage like them embezzling money from all the war funds. This is why Trump can't get anything done. He won't embezzle money and let money be embezzled from the war funds. There's no war. We're not getting rich off of it. That's how the deep state built up all that with the war funds. They don't want us to win. They just want it to go long enough to steal money and empower deep state lives on the outside. So again, the Marshal Service is no stranger to criminally acting out in alleged official conduct. Again, it's called deprivation of rights under the color of law. I call it deprivation of rights under the fabricated color of law, because it's that next step. There's no law to cover their heinousness. I guess you combined laws. Deprivation of rights under color of law and fraud, defrauding the United States. That's what my coworkers were busy doing when I left the Marshal Service, as well as the rest of the criminal enterprise, DEA, FBI. Good thing to know Brian Welch had left DEA before that time period. They're running a business out of DEA. They picked about 3 or 4 people after 2010, I think it was. maybe 2012, 13, to arrest, along with some Baltimore City cops, to say, hey, enough's enough. They weren't the only ones. So it's not difficult to figure out who you all are, who took out Nome, who took out Bavino, who's busy taking out this officer in Minnesota. In fact, the entire Minnesota government is a criminal, playing its game out, enriching itself over the good of the people. Well, stay peaceful. More to come. Praise God in all that you do. Praise